What is going on, my friends? Welcome into the Monday morning or afternoon edition, depending on where you're tuning in, of the Daily Dime here at FTNFantasy.com. My name is Zac Graham, aka Kawaisenberg DFS, joined once again by my Daily Dime co-host. It's Alex Blickle. And Alex, fresh off an Eagles playoff victory, I know you were in attendance. So how was your Sunday?
That was fun. That was a lot of fun. The game couldn't have gotten off to a better start, right? The Eagles get the fumble recovery on the opening kick, so the crowd was loud from the get-go. It was just a really fun day. Wish DFS went a little bit better. Wish the picks went a little bit better. That was one of my worst NFL picks weeks of the entire season. It might have even been the second worst by win percentage. And we still had the chance for the big win with a couple stocks picks from this past week, and then just needed Jaden Daniels' longest rush, and he ran like crazy, but didn't have the longest one. So a bit of a frustrating week in that regard. But you know what? Would I trade that for an Eagles playoff win? Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I would trade some. Look, I would trade a lot just for the Steelers to lose a playoff game by single digits at this point.
There you go.
It's been I'm not complaining. They're in the playoffs almost every year, but I don't know. I know Adam Strangers has some things to say about that.
The funniest thing I saw this morning was since Mike Tomlin's last win, Doug Peterson has gotten hired, won a Super Bowl, fired, hired, won a playoff game, fired. All since Tomlin's last playoff win.
Yep. But then my case is always what has happened since, Mike Tomlin had a losing season? I don't know, 20 years worth of stuff. Anyways, we will talk some more football here because, of course, we are not done with the wild card round. We've got Rams and Vikings tonight. So I know Alex has some picks he wants to talk about. From the NFL side, we will start with NBA. This is the Daily Dime. So we're here to talk basketball first. So let's open up Underdog here. We'll get a couple Zooms for those watching here live on the YouTube. And I've got a trio of picks this morning. I had 4. And then we got Draymond Green, not at shoot around. Underdog pulls Golden State. So I do want to I can start real quickly, Alex, by talking about that pick that I am no longer putting in entries because of the way it has shifted. But I was looking at this Dennis Schroeder 6.5 assists prop, which was also on Prize Picks this morning. Now they just have a Goblin for 5.5, which is a little bit of a bummer as well. But this was very strong. If this gets back to a 1x multiplier, or we can also discuss putting this into an entry with another +1 multiplier type of pick. This under is very, very strong in my opinion here. But again, you see the 0.94x, so not nearly as excited. Not only was the lower than rather, if we're talking underdog lingo, not only was that not 0.94x, it was actually 1.05x when I was hitting that in some entries this morning. We've got Schroeder projected for just under 5.2 assists here tonight in 30.5 minutes. Steph Curry back, not on the injury report here tonight. Again, Draymond is questionable with the illness, didn't go to shoot around, but Schroeder is under this number in 11 of his 13 games so far with the Warriors. He stepped right into that starting role. So while the minutes did ramp up over about a game and a half, 2 games, this is a pretty solid sample we've got. He's averaging 10.2 potential assists across that 13-game sample. Toronto are top 3rd in the league in terms of most opponent assists allowed. But Schroeder, again, under this number in 11 of 13 games, things would have to go pretty darn well for him averaging 10 potential assists per game for this to go over more often than not, or higher than rather. So I don't hate this. And we do have another pick that is plus a 1x multiplier, but I don't love this as much as I did about an hour ago. Well, you have any extra commentary here on Schroeder lower than 6.5 assists?
Not really. I think the only thing I'll say here is I have started to like some unders a little bit more of late, and in particular on the free throws made, as you guys know. But I also think it makes sense on assists and trying to correlate. We've been doing these overs on assists with over on points a couple times. I do want to look for more under assists, under points opportunities, because then not only do you get the correlation of what happens just directly between these guys, but you also get that added correlation of how many times do we get picks blown up because of blowout, whereas an under pairing that's going to help immensely. So I do think it's something we should probably look at more. Maybe underdog penalizes for that. We have to actually wait until we have one of these options to see if they are going to do so. But it's something that I had the thought last week. So I kind of love the fact that just organically you've landed on an assist under.
Yeah, and so like, of course, if you're an FTN Fantasy subscriber, you go over to the Prize Picks tool that we have here, and you can see you can sort by Warriors Raptors, you can sort by points. If you like this Schroeder lower than 6.5 assists, Buddy Hield would be the top lower than selection here in terms of the points from the Warriors side, lower than 12.5 there. And I guess they are penalizing a little bit there, right, with the 2.82. Well, no, 0.94. So we're already getting penalized with that multiplier. But we're not going to that in this situation here. I do want to go ahead and move
real
on
quick, Zach. Quick, Zach, just to confirm, there is no correlation penalty there. That's purely the
right. It's just the 0.94x multiplier. So I want to go to Houston and Memphis, which even with the Spurs and Lakers on this slate, which I think will be an entertaining game for everybody to tune into, I think the best game on the night from a basketball standpoint is Houston and Memphis. We saw these two teams go at it the other night. Houston still shorthanded. We actually have Ja Morant now listed questionable, I believe. But Amen Thompson is what I want to attack here because Jabari Smith, of course, remains out. Another, 3 to 6 weeks on that probably. Thompson will remain in the starting role tonight, and he is playing massive minutes. Like, Ime Udoka did not open up this rotation with Jabari Smith going out. Puts Amen in the starting lineup. We tighten up those first 5, and then you're getting Cam Whitmore, Jayshawn Tate, little Aaron Holiday, and Steven Adams to round out that rotation. Reed Shepherd is called up here. That doesn't worry me really with this pick at all. Amen Thompson, double-double tonight, 1.18x. We've got him projected for north of 16 points and then 9.3 rebounds here in the model in a 37-minute projection. He got 35 against Memphis last game, but lost a good amount of time, which is crazy thinking that he played 35 minutes and lost a lot of time in that third quarter to foul trouble. I don't think it's crazy for him to crack 40 minutes here. This game is, I believe, a 1 or a 1.5 point spread at present. So we expect this one to be very competitive throughout the full 48. If we crack 40 minutes here, even better for Amen Thompson. He did just have 10 points and 7 boards in that last game. So, like, if we're just game log watching in this specific matchup, he did not come through for us in those 35 minutes. But if you look just on the full body of work that Amen has put out there this year, 8 starts so far this season. He's got a double-double in half of those. One of those misses, he actually came up short in the points department, 9 points and 10 boards in one of those misses. And then in 2 of those other 3 remaining misses, double-digit points and 8 rebounds. So right there on the edge. That doesn't get it done for us, but again, already over in half of these 8 starts. He also has 2 double-doubles in 2 games where he played less than 24 minutes off the bench this season. So this is, again, a guy who can rack up the points and rebounds. The one stat that we're not worried about comes out of my mouth. When playing 33.5 or more minutes, again, I love to bring in those arbitrary cutoff lines for these sample sizes, but 11 games this season playing 33.5 or more minutes, double-double in 7 of those 11, right? Because we've seen him come off the bench and have some extended runs. So I wanted to get some of those games into this sample size as well. I just think this should be closer to 1x than 1.2. And it does allow us to put this Schroeder assist prop into some of these entries. If we have to, we don't have to. I've got 2 more picks, but what do you think about Amen and how do you feel about Schroeder 0.94 as long as we have this Amen pick in there?
Yeah, if you're using the Amen pick, you can definitely add Schroeder. The only thing I'd ask you, Zach, is did you like the Schroeder pick initially because you were getting the multiplier, or would you have been just as excited about it even if you saw it with no multiplier to begin?
I had it in on Prize Picks without the multiplier. So that was actually kind of surprising to me because like that Schroeder pick was one that the Prize Picks tool here at FTN pointed me towards, and then digging into it deeper over that 13-game sample, it felt like a really strong pick. And then we were getting 1.05x in the early parts of the morning here. So I like that 6.5. If that pops up again on Prize Picks where you can get it as a 1x prop, love it. If it falls back to 1x here, love it even more. But I will probably go ahead and enter this because I do not have any Schroeder and Thompson pairings yet in my entries this morning. So I will probably end up pairing these two guys probably in 2 more entries with these 2 other picks that I have here. So I want to go to that Spurs and Lakers matchup that I mentioned. And I see Josh in the chat here. Good to see JJ. Hope you had a good wild card weekend, my friend. So Spurs in LA, of course, this is the second game. They were supposed to play on Saturday as well. That game was postponed. So this is not the postponed game. This was already on the schedule. We have, of course, on the Lakers side, Dorian Finney-Smith. Those minutes continue to trickle up. So let's start with Dorian Finney-Smith. You notice that line now, as we said, continuing to move upwards, was at 6.5 the first 5 games. Now we've got it at 7.5, and I still like the higher than 7.5 points here. The model does as well. We've got him projected for 9.9 points in 28 minutes here. But I mentioned again, and it is going a little bit slower than I thought it may, but Dorian Finney-Smith is getting to this 30-minute range now. He was on pace to crack 30 minutes last game before he lost a couple minutes in the blowout against the Mavericks. He's over, again, opening this sample size up to his time with the Nets this season because of the fact that his minutes were so similar there in Brooklyn to what they were here or what they have been here in Los Angeles. He's played 30 minutes or less in 18 of his 25 total appearances this season between the 2 teams. And he's over this number in that same 18 of 25 appearances this season between the 2 teams. So this still feels a point or 2 too low. The projection model here at FTN would also point to that fact. And I'm certainly not scared of this Spurs matchup with Jeremy Sohan questionable. Victor Wembanyama is out there. Okay, you respect the Spurs defense, but there's going to be at least 12, probably closer to 14 to 15 minutes of no Wemby out there. And those are very advantageous minutes for opponents as well. So all of that to say, I still think this number is too low on Finney-Smith as his minutes continue to trend towards that 30-minute mark. I think this line, a month from now will consistently be at 9.5.
I agree. And it's all about the minutes for me. You said it, like 20, 24, 23, 26, 28. We're getting to where we expected him to be. And he's also been making shots. And the more he makes shots, the more he's going to be on the floor. They basically brought him in for that perimeter defense. So if he then adds the shooting element, like there's no reason for them to take him off the floor. So definitely in at this number, and agree. I think it ends up 8.5, 9.5, 10.5 on a consistent basis.
And that was one of the reasons I think that the Lakers and other teams, right, the Grizzlies were in on this as well. 43.3% from 3. That is a career high by more than 3 percentage points here this year between the 2 teams. 42% in his 5 appearances with LA. If that shot continues to go in, like I mentioned on the fast break when this happened, I expected Dorian Finney-Smith to eventually be in this starting lineup. JJ Redick has been a little bit stubborn. We'll see how long, how poorly can they play before he makes that move? We'll see. They've got a good matchup here tonight, but I'm also not terribly nervous about the Lakers matchup on this side. And I think Julian Champagne's line of 7.5 points. Look at us attacking a pair of 7.5 point lines here. I think this is also too low. Now, Sohan playing will ding my confidence in this pick a little bit, but I would still like it. We have Sohan projected in for a full 32-minute run here tonight. It's a back issue that has been plaguing Sohan for the better part of 2 weeks here, but they've had the extended layoff. So we have Sohan in there, and this in the model is still a very, very strong pick. Champagne, 10.1 points in his 22-minute projection here. He's over this number. Like, we've had Sohan back, and of course, in and out, and no pun intended, having Sohan back here, in and out of the lineup over the last 2 weeks with the back issue, but throughout the season, Champagne he's over this number in 30 of 37 games, right? He's been in a starting role for the majority of the season, but coming off the bench of late, as this team has gotten more healthy, you've got Sohan back from the fractured hand. You've got Vassell back recovering from the foot surgery, Champagne in a bench role. He's over this number in 8 of his last 9 off the bench. So this feels like a very strong pick here. And if Sohan sits, that's going to open up the minute ceiling for Champagny up to the upper 20s instead of the low 20s where we've got his projection right now. So I really like this pick as well. And I feel fine pairing these two guys from this game, which I believe is a 6-point line. Last I checked here. Yeah. Or no, it's down to 3.5. So maybe Sohan is playing, but Lakers by 3.5. Healthy enough, 220.5 total. I like this Champagny pick as well.
The thing that stands out to me is the shooting volume. The last 2 times he's played fewer than 20 minutes, he's played 16 minutes in each game, shot 8 times and 9 times. He took a combined 15 threes in 32 minutes of those games. So yeah, even if you don't get like what you're hoping for from a minutes rotation, chances are you're still getting enough shot volume where he can hit this.
Yeah, I mean, that is what he's out there to do. Play like slightly above average wing defense on that end and shoot every possible three that he has a sliver of space for, because they don't have a ton of shooting. And Champagny, again, you've seen like even coming off the bench where I think he's going to have a pretty successful career as an 8th or 9th man on a good team. He's thriving in this role. You see the points, 8 of his last 9 over this number. Big fan of this here tonight. So those are the 4 that I have a lot of interest right now, Alex. We can shift over to the NFL side of things, and maybe we can find a 5th and a 6th pick here. And if we don't have 2 more NFL picks that we love here tonight, maybe by the time we finish talking NFL, we've got some more stocks props that we can peruse on the NBA side. So let me navigate over here to Vikings and Rams tonight. Where are you looking here for your favorite pick of the night?
Yeah, I'm going to start with DeMarcus Robinson.
Okay.
Two Gun and I were talking about this the other day on For the Millie. Appreciate new subscriber here, by the way. Oh, always going to follow you back.
What up, P.
I always love seeing that stuff. As far as DeMarcus Robinson goes, this game is kind of tough to predict. Like, as you guys know, one thing that I love to do is just analyze like coverage tendencies and things like that, and then find, okay, this team plays a lot of this, and therefore we should use this player because he has good splits in that regard. Minnesota is tough, not just because, as we learned over the last couple of days, like once you get to the playoffs, teams are more willing to change up what they do to have a specific game plan for their opponent rather than just doing what they do each week. But Minnesota has already established a not just willingness, but an ability to change their defensive game plan for the opponent. And so what they love to do is they love to play zone and they love to blitz. The problem with that is Stafford, Puka, and Kupp are all incredible against the blitz. They're also all quite good against zone coverages. So it becomes a lot harder to do what Minnesota wants to do. Or it becomes a lot harder to do just what the Rams want to do offensively because we don't know how Minnesota is going to attack them. So I kind of like going against the coverage tendencies of Minnesota, expecting them to change things up and leaning more into what I think will be their overall philosophy of they prioritize the best receiver on the other team and even the 2 best receivers. Wide receiver 3s against Minnesota have thrived all season. And if we do get a less blitz heavy and a less zone heavy approach, that also really benefits DeMarcus Robinson. And as Two Gun said, he hasn't produced lately, but he's at least running all the routes. Like Tutu Atwell only saw 4 routes in his last game. So it's been DeMarcus Robinson on the field. It's a really low number, 22.5 here. Let's just go to that.
I like it. That makes a ton of sense to me here. And again, like that's what I think I've seen from like, obviously not the outside looking in here at FTN, but like looking at all the content that came out leading up to Wildcard Weekend, the deep dives on these matchups that we were able to do with Stats Hub, which again was hope everybody enjoyed their free trial of Stats Hub this past weekend. So being able to drill down on a prop like this makes all the sense in the world to me. Where else we going here, if anything?
So one of the other things I was looking at is on the other side of this game, the Rams are plus 24% to opposing tight ends, and it hasn't been that way all season. That has really been, to some degree, a recent trend. So I do definitely have some interest in TJ Hawkinson. I think the 6.5 targets is really interesting. I think the 42.5 receiving yards is pretty low. The Justin Jefferson line is so high that I don't think I want to go there, but the Rams have given up some explosive plays all season. So I think you could also go to Jordan Addison over 23.5 longest reception or 59.5 receiving yards. But my overall favorite play on this Minnesota side is the Rams have given up a lot of explosive rushes. And would you believe, near the absolute top of the league in explosive run percent, not Aaron Jones, Cam Akers. So he's consistently been getting like, they like to go Aaron Jones for probably 2, maybe 3 drives, and then give Cam Akers a full drive. And then go back to Aaron Jones, then give Cam Akers a full drive. And because he's getting these full drives, he has a pretty nice floor in terms of his like total rushes. So 22.5 rushing yards, I think, is extremely low for the guy who, in all likelihood, he's going to have at least one run over 10 yards. If you're getting a handful of carries and you're getting one over 10 yards, it's going to be really difficult to not get to 22.5. So Demarcus Robinson, 22.5, Cam Akers, 22.5. Really low numbers, but I think these are the 2 highest probability plays of the night.
So I know when you and I were talking before we hit live here today, you mentioned you were wishing for a longest rush prop on Cam Akers. Mm-hmm. We have that now, 8.5 0.94x, 9.5 1.09x, and then we can continue the ladder. Is that something now, looking at these lines now that they're posted, like, is this something that would jump the total rush yards for you?
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look here. He has longest rushes this season of 58, 16, 3, so that would be 1 loss, 11, 25, 18, 15, 12, 11, 13. No carries, 1, 15, 15, 9, 13. So he's basically only had 2 legitimate failures at 8.5 and 3 legitimate failures at 9.5 all season. And now you also give him a good matchup here. So I like the 9.5. I love laddering this as well. I probably only do the 29.5 ladder just because he's been in that like 11 to 16 yard range so often that, you know what, give me the 25, give me the 58 that he's had so far this season, and just hope that it's a big explosive run when he breaks it if you want to ladder it. In fact, does it go lower? Does he have a 39.5?
No, it's 29.5 is where they cut us off right now.
Yeah, I saw the arrows. I would be interested if it goes to 39.5, 49.5 as well, just because sometimes if you break into open space, it's just a matter of, did you do that on the 40-yard line, the 50-yard line, the negative 40? Like, it just depends that way. So really, really like the explosive rushes. And I think I would settle on over 9.5 longest run as opposed to the 22.5 rushing yards. Just if they were both the same payout, I think it'd be a really tough decision.
That was my next question, so I'm glad you went there. So we've got, I mean, this is a nice little 6 pick here, 4 NBA picks, 2 NFL picks. So I think for me, of those 4 NBA picks, my favorite 3 would be the Thompson, Finney-Smith, and Champagnie trio there. But are we comfortable throwing this in as a 6-pick entry as well?
Definitely.
All right, so we'll go on. I'm going to, we'll throw $10 on that there. And we've got, of course, the Amin Thompson 1.18x, the Akers 1.09x to not just offset our 0.94 with the Schroeder pick, but take us over that normal flex payout there at underdog. Anything else? I do see P Mike in the chat here saying JJ over 6.5 catches, over or higher than half a touchdown. And also the kicker, he's eyeing the field goals made prop. Do you have any analysis on any of those 3 props he's eyeing?
Yeah, I was able to quickly do some analysis on Jefferson. He's hit that in 8 games, so seems pretty much like a toss-up. Let me see where we have Jefferson's receptions. My lean is that it's a no play. We have him at 6. So actually, no, we have him at exactly 6.5, pretty much. So, like I said, that seems more like a total toss-up. I think, I'm staring at the projections right now. I think the Addison yards is probably the strongest of all of the pass catchers on Minnesota if you want something there. But they all seem to be priced pretty fairly. I also think, I mentioned this to you before we went live, Zach, this seems like a very good game for pick 6, knowing people want to bet on Justin Jefferson. So I think you could play this a couple ways where you either go under on Justin Jefferson, over on both Hawkinson and Addison, or you flip that. You say, you know what, maybe in this game they are going to be able to force feed Justin Jefferson. Let me go over on Jefferson, under on Hawkinson and Addison. And now you're doing combinations of plays that are positively correlated, but most people are going to say over, or under. So you're able to then get a unique combination where you could really potentially get that huge payout, as we know can happen on these island games.
Do you guys have a stream for the one game tonight, or was that all covered in main slate matchups last Friday?
Do you mind saying that again?
Do you guys have another stream tonight, you and Two Gun or you and Prop, or is the NFL streams for Wild Card Weekend already happened?
Yeah, we did one on Friday for subscribers only, and we're just doing the one subscriber only show throughout the playoffs, I think. But we will have a showdown article, and as always, like all of the plays will be posted in the Pick'em channel Discord.
My last question here, you mentioned Addison. I think receiving yards is or was it longest reception that's your favorite remaining?
I think
because you also mentioned Hawkinson targets.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. The Hawkinson 4.5 receptions at 1.17x. That's strong. I didn't realize that was 1.17. I like that, I think, more than the reception speed or more than the receiving yards, because I do think there's a chance that one of the reasons why Hawkinson would actually thrive in this way is because Los Angeles looks at the way they have defended so far this season, and they see, hey, we've given up a lot of explosive plays in the passing game. No offense has hit more deep completions than this Minnesota team all season. They lead in deep passing yards. They lead in deep completions. We need to really kind of sell out to stop that. And what's that going to open up? The underneath throws to TJ Hawkinson. So that over 4.5 receptions, I do think is quite strong.
Awesome. Well, plenty of NFL talk there, of course. While we're still live here, you can join in on the live chat like Josh and P Mike and B Fry in here, who is another look. We got angry Steelers fans in here, so we won't dive into that right now, B Fry. But I know we're feeling some type of way here.
Zach, what did you think of the Pickens comments? Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
But he was like, have you seen signs of growth? Yeah, this year was definitely a lot better than any that I've had so far in Pittsburgh. So does that give you optimism for the future? Nah.
Yeah, I mean, like, do I want him to be saying stuff like that? And there's been a lot of, and I'm by no means the most tapped in Steelers fan that there is. I listen to podcasts and this and that, but all the stuff coming out the last couple of weeks with the defense griping at each other, like somebody's not doing their job, little bit of locker room turmoil there. And now this, would I rather not have that? Yes. Is George Pickens wrong with what he said? No. And was it a little bit funny? Yes. So look, here's Strangest tuning in here saying he didn't know what optimistic meant -1. That's probably a good line there, Adam. So let's go ahead. Let's see if we can get blocks and steals. Still just Fred. Let me get a refresh here, and I think this might boot all of our picks out because that's what Underdog has been doing to me on desktop. If it shuts this down on me again, we'll see. Yeah, so it's just Fred VanVleet here that's showing in terms of the stocks. I don't think we have steals. I don't think we have blocks all on their own. Yeah, nothing for steals, nothing for blocks, nothing for free throws made, and nothing for fantasy points. So, when those populate, we will take a look. And if we have any picks that we really like, all of our FTN fantasy subscribers will get that in the Pick'em Games channel of the Discord. You ready to talk some DFS here before we shut it down on our Monday?
For sure.
All right, so let's open up the ownership and GPP scores here for DraftKings and FanDuel on tonight's 6-game NBA slate. Quick rundown here. We'll get a couple zooms. And let's search by sort by GPP score here. We see Dillon Brooks, Jeremy Sohan, Emmanuel Quickly. A lot of names that I would expect, again, continuing to try to hold off on my first look at these numbers until we're live here, compare them with my notes, and looks like some of these things falling into line. I do think in my notes here, I said Wemby is likely going to be under-owned here, so probably a good GPP play. He's not at the top of these GPP scores, but looks like just outside the top 10, and that ownership number is exactly where I thought it was going to be, hovering around 10%. He's 8.1% in the morning run here. Spurs just 3.5-point road dogs to the Lakers. Not a great matchup on paper going up against Anthony Davis, and we should include Anthony Davis in this as well. Wemby and Davis have both had big games against each other over the last year and change since Wemby entered the league. And I think there's going to be, if we sort by ownership here, there's going to be a lot more interest on the Lakers side of the spend ups. You can see LeBron at 22 Anthony Davis at 21% compared to Wemby's 8%. So in tournaments, Wemby would be my favorite spend up of those three, but that is not me saying that Brow and Braun are not very strong spend ups on the other side of this game, because they very much are, and I'm not scared off of them by that low 20s ownership projection here this morning. The obvious team to attack tonight is Minnesota, and if I go back and sort by ownership percentage, boom, 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 5 of the top 6, 6 of the top 8 are Minnesota players here. And then you see Dante DiVincenzo down there as well, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, this is just the Minnesota rotation against the Washington Wizards. They play 8 guys, and like you could say 8.5 if you include the 6 to 8 minutes of Josh Minott you'll probably get tonight. But these guys, the prices did not really increase for the matchup. $9K on Anthony Edwards, but then after that, $72 for Julius Randle. Mike Conley in his bench roll is down to 3,400. Like, even in his bench roll, that is a very strong price for a guy like Conley in this matchup. And you can see he is tops in the ownership projections. But I don't think, like, 31% for a $3,400 Conley against the Wizards, I don't think that ownership number is high enough for me to say, like, okay, that's a dangerous tournament play where I want to look elsewhere for value. Like, no, I'm fine with it. GPP score is not crazy. It's not unsurprisingly in the negative there, but negative 2.2, again, is not something I think you should be sprinting away from. Of those top 4 guys, Alex, 5,200 for Rudy Gobert. I know he hasn't been great. I know it's not exciting to get him into your lineups, but at that price,
yeah,
what does he have? Like 10 and 10 with 2 blocks? Like, that kind of gets you there. And so, like, I think there's upside for more as well. So, like, I love these Minnesota guys. None of these ownerships are pushing me away from them. Like, if the Opto spit out 4 Wolves in a lineup right now, I think I'm fine with it. And of course, I'll refine these priorities of these Wolves guys as we get closer to lock. But it seems like the nut spot, and with these prices on DraftKings, they kind of all make sense in their own right, given their prices and positional eligibilities. Even 3,300 for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's guard forward eligible. He's sub 20% owned. Like, that makes some sense, especially if you're looking to get a little bit less total ownership from your Wolves guys. Like, don't play Conley, play Alexander-Walker, and maybe then you're playing for a little bit of a blowout. So Minnesota looks amazing. We talked about Wembanyama. We talked about the Lakers spend ups. If Sohan does in fact miss, and I do lean that he plays right now, if he does miss, Stephon Castle should start. He is a Conley pivot immediately. He'll look great. And then the other Spurs wings, your Champagny, your Harrison Barnes, your Keldon Johnson, those guys come into play. Regardless of Sohan, Vassell, and Chris Paul look like fine mid-range options in that game. From the Raptors and Warriors, I think the Warriors probably still a little bit too convoluted for me to get a ton of exposure there. You can see the field is very interested in a $5,700 Draymond Green. With him missing shoot around in the illness tag, he probably doesn't play. So maybe we'll be talking more Trace Jackson Davis. Maybe we'll be looking harder at an Andrew Wiggins by the time we get to lock, but not a ton of interest in Golden State as they stand now. We've also got a questionable tag on Emmanuel Quickly on the other side of that game. He's still cheap enough on both sides that if he gives it a go, I have a high level of interest. And then we also, right before we went live, we got Jalen Brunson questionable with the shoulder. Of course, if he sits here against the Pistons, it's Deuce McBride night. And then, of course, the other dominoes that fall with the remaining 4 starters and how much better they look at their respective prices. So we'll keep an eye, of course, on the Knicks news. And I think that's it. But, well, let's take a look at the FanDuel GPP scores real quick. Dillon Brooks, and that's, I guess, the last team I should talk about for both sites. Houston also looks great. Still very, very condensed rotation, as we talked about when we were discussing the Amin Thompson double pick. He's 7,200 on DraftKings. That's a guy like I didn't even look for here, but like 18% guard forward, 7,300. It's the ownership is too small. Like, the price is too cheap still. Like, I'm going to be over the field in a big way, I think, on Amin Thompson if that 18% number holds on DraftKings. But you can see Dillon Brooks, the model, loving Dillon Brooks here. And I think for good reason. Like, he is nowhere near the fantasy producer that Amin Thompson is or some of the other guys in that lineup, but he's like half the price of the other starters, and he's got the guard forward eligibility here on FanDuel, not being ignored by the field, 31% over there on FD, but that totally makes sense why he's popping. And you see the model liking these Toronto guys at their prices over there on FanDuel. I mentioned quickly, he's 6,800 there, 22% owned. Gobert, a little bit of a different story where you only have one center spot and he's 6,300, but those Minnesota guys, not as appealing, I think, if you're just comparing DK to FanDuel, but you can see they're still getting plenty of attention. Anthony Edwards 3rd, Julius Randle 4th, Dante DiVincenzo 7th, Jaden McDaniels 9th in the ownership. So like you can still get you some Minnesota Timberwolves against the Wizards on FanDuel, but they look amazing over there on DraftKings.
On DraftKings, would you right now have a lean on like what your minimum number of Wolves is and what your max number of Wolves is?
It would feel real wrong, I think, for lack of a better term, at this, like if the slate started in 5 minutes, it would feel wrong to not have a Timberwolves player in a DraftKings lineup. I think I probably would want most of my lineups to have 2, given how cheap they are over there. And I think 4 I feel perfectly fine with. Again, like if 3 of my 4 are Gobert, Naz Reid, and Julius Randle, I don't like that as much.
Yeah.
But like, so you have to be smart with how you're allocating your Wolves ownership, especially in a single lineup. But yeah,
to the same point, I think it matters. Like, are you using 3 guys who are values, or are you trying to get both Randle and Edwards in there, right? And so,
right.
I think I agree with that. And then the other thing I'd say is I think you can also be very purposeful with the Wolves of like you mentioned. You can pivot off of Conley for Alexander Walker or DiVincenzo, something like that. Where if you're going to more contrarian value, now maybe you spend up and actually use Davis or LeBron, some of these more popular payups. If you're going to Conley, now it incentivizes you to get different with your spend up, go to Wembanyama. So you can think of it that way as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. And I think for the time being, again, we are a little under 6 hours from lock here tonight for this 6-game slate, but I think that's about all I have right now from the DFS side of things. But of course, we'll be in chat in the NBA DFS channel of the FTN Fantasy Discord leading up to lock. We'll get the ownership projections updated, all that good stuff as news breaks throughout the day. So looking forward to another week of a good NBA schedule, man. But sitting between 6 and 10 games almost every night. It's a sweet spot right now.
For sure.
All right, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in, sticking with us here on the Monday morning edition of the Daily Dime here at FTNFantasy.com. I think I'm back tomorrow. Alex has other responsibilities. So Alex will be back on Wednesday, but I'll be here on Tuesday, same time, same place, breaking down the NBA slate tomorrow. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll do the same. We'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of the Daily Dime. Goodbye.